smoke rising up into the sky, and we knew it wasn't good. The press was already there coming up to us, asking us for comment on our experience in the building. I was speechless, and for me that's saying something. I simply was still in shock and didn't know what to do or where to go. I was worrying about my husband Rick in Crystal City, about a mile away, who was supposed to be leaving on a trip to Florida for his job at 1 p.m. out of Reagan National. I had no cell phone with me, and I had no way to contact him. I also was thinking of my family here in Putnam, who I knew must be worried sick about me. It was surreal what was happening at that moment. I decided to walk on the road to the other side of the building where the plane had hit. It was a long walk to that area. A couple of people walked with me, though I have no idea if I knew them or not. By the time we arrived on the south side where the plane had gone in, it was going on 11 a.m. or so. It was unbelievable to see that part of the Pentagon on fire, with black smoke going up into the sky, with the 5th floor now lying on top of the 1st floor. I was numb. That was when I saw many of the folks I thought could have died, and it was so emotional to see each other unhurt physically, but emotionally devastated. By then, the circuits were overloaded and phone service was non-existent by landline or cell, so I went into a building nearby that had a payphone to try my luck at calling my husband. I actually got through right away. His coworker answered the phone and said he was not in his office because they had been evacuated earlier for fear of bombs being placed in the parking garages of their high-rise building. He was aware that I was safe after calling my office and finding one person there locking up classified information. He was outside trying to decide how to find me. It was then that I decided to start walking to his building because my car was not accessible to me anymore. I couldn't believe what I saw happening on the roads and in the Crystal City complex. It was like a scene from a terrifying movie where cars were obstructing entire intersections and no one could move in any direction. People were running on the sidewalks to go somewhere, anywhere. I had to stop people to ask how to get to the building where my husband worked. It had to be close to 1 p.m. or so by the time I got there. I was so out of it that I didn't recognize my own husband, who was walking towards me on the sidewalk, calling me by name. I think that was the first time I cried. We went up to the 7th floor to his office and called my mom in Putnam. Again, the call went through immediately. Mom answered on the first ring, and she started to cry, and I did too. I told her I was fine physically and asked her to let the family know that. Having my family know I was okay was a relief to me. We looked at the traffic on the roads leading in and out of Washington, and it was paralyzed. So we waited until about 4 p.m. to attempt to go from Arlington to our home in Annandale, Virginia, about 8 miles south of the Pentagon. We finally got to our home, and there were so many messages on our phone from family and friends everywhere. People were really worried about me, and that made me feel conflicted, happy yet sad, because I knew that people I worked with and cared about had perished in that building, and I had yet to find out who they were. On 12 September 2001, I was sitting in my kitchen in Annandale, still in a state of shock, watching the coverage on TV of what had happened just 24 hours earlier. I was thinking that the previous day was not real, but the people I knew and worked with were no longer with us. I received the call later that day from Commander Roddy, who gave me the names of the deceased, who he knew I would want to know about, especially from him, and not from the Washington Post or the TV news. I was in a mindset of disbelief and sadness. Some were young sailors that I would talk to every day as they passed by my door. And others I had gotten to know as nice people from the Navy Command Center. Angie Holtz, who would come by my office to talk to Commander Roddy, her former boss, had just turned 27 on September 6th. Jim Lynch, also known as the Candy Man, would walk the E-ring several times around for exercise during his lunch period. He was in his 50s. He would always say hi to me as he passed by my door and put a wrapped hard candy on my desk. It was a nice gesture, and I always gave him a smile and a thank you. Jerry DeCanto, a fellow New Englander from Massachusetts, was a Navy captain who I had worked with when he was a young lieutenant in the late 80s, and he had just returned to the Pentagon a few weeks earlier to be the director of the current Operations and Plans branch in the Navy Command Center. He had just spent the weekend in East Lyme, Connecticut at a family reunion. He was 44. He and his staff were among the innocent who were lost at the hands of cowardly terrorists on that fateful day. I also learned that the pilot of American Airlines Flight 77 that hit our building and the passenger on that flight, a Rear Admiral, were Navy Reserve officers en route to LA from Dulles Airport. I knew both of them from when they would do their 2 weeks of active duty in the Pentagon and would make a courtesy call on the vice chief. Knowing who had died the day before made it more real than I could fathom. My office was uninhabitable due to smoke, water, and soot damage, and the double doors at the end of the passageway were locked and guarded by soldiers assigned to ensure that no one who was not authorized to be in that area could possibly go to try to retrieve their personal belongings. It simply was not safe. I was able to retrieve my vehicle after 2 days, but it was not without a lot of stress, just trying to get through the military roadblocks that had popped up overnight and being checked closely by young men with guns on their hip or shoulder. I was as serious as I could be when speaking with them because this was no longer a training exercise to them. It was real and it was serious. The vice chief and our staff, along with the chief of naval operations and his staff, were sent to a building built during World War II and that overlooked the Pentagon. It was called the Navy Annex, with its cramped spaces, dingy walls, and cracked windows. And it would be our home for at least a month until we could bump a subordinate and their staff out of their spaces in the parts of the Pentagon that had not been affected. I learned in talking with the Navy commander and 2 civilian women who were at work in the annex that day that the wheels of the airplane had touched the roof of their building as it was heading toward the Pentagon, and that they watched the plane go in. They said they fell to their knees and began to pray. They were still traumatized weeks later with that vision that they will never forget. We eventually were able to return to the Pentagon and ended up ousting a Marine 3-star general in the 7th Corridor until we could eventually get back to the part of the building where we had been when the plane hit us. This was a clear-cut case of rank has its privileges. It was a pleasant space, but oh so small. I was the only female in a room full of Navy officers and enlisted, so business as usual was not happening. We were cramped, but at least we were back in the Pentagon again. The passageways smelled of jet fuel, and there were huge air filter machines in the halls to help alleviate the ever-reminding odor of what had happened to us just a month prior. The first day that Reagan National Airport reopened, when the first plane went over the Pentagon into the airport, it took us all by surprise and shook us all up. Our innocence was gone, and we suddenly felt very vulnerable. We were given group and individual counseling, which I had never thought was something that people in traumatic events would need. I was wrong. My first group session with 2 counselors and about 20 Navy and military civilian folks sitting in a circle was an eye-opener. The anger and hurt that was displayed at that session was suddenly understood by me. I was angry and sad that many nice people had to die at the Pentagon, as well as New York and Pennsylvania. Many were also severely burned but survived. That was tough to learn about as the days and weeks passed. People in the wrong place, wrong time. I was offered a job in early February 2002 working for one of my retired vice chiefs, who was going to be CEO of a not-for-profit company in Northern Virginia, supporting the federal government. I was torn about retiring from the Navy Department, but no longer felt comfortable in the building I had served the Navy for over 32 years. I retired at the end of April 2002 and went to work at LMI for almost 5 years before deciding to fully retire and return to my hometown in Connecticut. I have not been back inside the Pentagon since the day I retired in 2002. However, while visiting our friends in Alexandria, Virginia in 2014, I finally was able to visit the Pentagon Memorial to pay my respects to all those I knew who had died that day, as well as those I didn't know. Had the terrorists hit there just a few months later, the number of casualties would have been so much greater. But for the grace of God, I and many others were spared that day. Thank you all for coming and for allowing me to tell my story of 9/11. God bless us all, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee, for that extraordinary story, which I certain brings home the feelings and sorrow that happened on that day. So thank you very much for that story. The next part of our program is going to be a song sung by Linda Colangelo. Many in this room know Linda as a noted vocalist in our area. So at this time, I'd like to present Linda to present God Bless the USA.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it so much. And like the others, I am so honored to be here today. I did not plan to cry today, Dee, but so you've made it a little bit more difficult for me, but that's okay. And I'd also like to acknowledge, Dee, because of your remarkable story, this is how we learn best. This is how we learn best, when we hear the shared experiences of human beings, and we hear it and see it face to face. And perhaps in addressing some of the young people in the room, that it's so wonderful that you're here with your parents or your grandparents, and you've taken the time to come here today to learn about this remarkable part of history that we all share. And it's nothing that you'll ever get the experience like you had this afternoon, You won't get that on your cell phone. You won't get that on your computer. But today we had the privilege of getting it from Dee Carnahan, and thank you for that, Dee. There's something else that unites us always as a country, and that is song. It is music. And back in 1984, a country artist by the name of Lee Greenwood penned a song called God Bless the USA, and he did so because he felt that the country that he knew, that he loved, was kind of falling apart, and he wanted to memorialize his feelings. And he picked 4 cities across the country to include in that song. And it reached number 7 on the country charts back in 1984. But in 2001, it went from number 7 on the country charts to number 1 for this country. And they won't make a political statement today about the national anthem and this flag that represents so much for so many of us. And as long as it stands, so should we. But perhaps the children today who are learning and role modeling from celebrities and sports figures, perhaps it's people like us, everyday people in everyday communities, who will stand whether the flag comes in or whether we share the experience of Dee Carnahan, that everyone jumped to their feet at the end of your remarks, because that's the common experience we share. So God Bless the USA became an anthem of sorts, a new anthem for a new generation. It became the song of 9/11 and the Gulf War that followed. It became a song of hope and rebuilding after 9/11, as well as after Hurricane Katrina. So whatever song brings you to your feet, whether it's our national anthem or God Bless America or God Bless the USA, always be proud. Be proud to stand for the things that you believe in. This is God Bless the USA by Lee Greenwood. That you'd worked for all your life, and you had to start again with just your children and your wife. You'd thank your lucky stars you'd be living here today, 'cause this flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget all those who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit on down to Houston, and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, God bless the
Thank you, Linda. That was fantastic. It brought chills up my spine. So we're coming to the conclusion of our event today, and with that stirring rendition of God Bless the USA, it's appropriate to sort of end on that note, but we still have the benediction, which I'd like to introduce Reverend Tom Meyer from our pastor of our Congregational Church. And then at the end of the benediction, we'll have the retirement of the colors, and that will conclude the program. So, Reverend Meyer.
I don't know how you expect me to speak after that. Will you join me, please, in prayer? Dear God, as we gather here today to remember and to reflect, let us also renew our commitment to you and to each other. Let us renew our commitment to solidarity and to shared society. Let us renew our faith in the fundamental truth that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Every day in our prayers as a community, we affirm the message from the prophets. We will have no fear of the suddenness of terror. Together and united, we shall not be afraid. Let us go from this place in peace, and let us continue to pray for a world in which lasting peace will abide. Amen.
Amen.
Please rise for the retirement of the colors by the color guard of Post 13.
Hey. What do you say? Huh. Huh. Left. Hey. Forward. Huh.
That concludes our program. Thank you for coming, and have a good afternoon.